CGPirates Consultant Cris Robson will make a workshop about Unreal Engine Blueprint system, how developers can use it to leverage their own games, and the power of the simple blueprint system in Unreal Engine 4. So the camera and microphone is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you for letting me talk today. It's hopefully going to be a lot of fun. So I'm just going to share my screen before I start talking about myself, because of course I'm going to have to explain why I'm here. Right, so how do you do? I am Cris Robson. I'm a specialist trainer and also an indie game developer. I got into indie game developing quite late in my life. I've consulted and worked for a lot of companies in the past 22 years. But as I got nearer to the age of 50, I thought, well, it's time to kind of start doing things for myself more. So I still train people in game development, not so much in 3D anymore, because I was a specialist 3D trainer as well. And I also develop video games, which is so much fun, so enjoyable. And yes, it's hard, but very, very rewarding. Now, what I'm going to talk to you today about is one of the most interesting things, in my opinion, in Unreal Engine, and that is the blueprint system. Now, what I have here is I have an open copy of Unreal Engine. If you've never used Unreal Engine before, what I did was I just started a brand new scene in Unreal Engine, and then I started with the first person template, which you can see just there. The reason I did that is because, pardon me, if I press play, I have a nice first person view and I can do some experiments. I can test out some blueprints and I can see it immediately. You know, I can see what's going to happen and get a good feel for what it is I'm doing. I always like to work in a very visual way. Now, the first question is, what are blueprints? Okay, well, I am a very, very bad programmer. I'm not good at it at all. I can't program C++ to save my life. Blueprints are a very visual way of being able to do code. So if you can see in your head or when you write down what it is you want something to do, but you don't understand code particularly well, blueprints is a way that you can kind of see what you're doing and put it together in blocks, very much like the material editor in 3ds Max or Maya that uses little nodes to connect things together, or Softimage if you're old like me. Now, let me just open up the blueprint system and we're going to get really started straight away. Now, if you've never used Unreal Engine before, I don't really have time to explain how to use all of the interface and things like that today, because I'm only here for an hour. But I'm just, to look around, I'm pressing the right mouse button and holding it down. And to go forward, back, left, right, I'm just using WASD. Okay, so just to move around my scene. Now, what we can see here is my character. And if I click on it, we can see the view my character would have. And what I'm going to do is I am going to look on the left here, and I'm going to drag this box trigger just into my scene and put it here. Now, these are all of our tools, okay? These are things that we can just drag into our scene and use and work with. Things that you may be used to, such as, you know, cubes, spheres, cones, etc. But each of these is also something we can use inside of a blueprint. So what I have here with this box trigger is I have an invisible area. And what I want to do is I want Unreal Engine to notice when I go into this invisible area and perform a very simple action and just say to me, you are here. Once I'm doing that, then I know that my blueprint is working and that I have this kind of interaction that I want, and I can expand upon that. But the most important thing is that we can get an event and an action. So I'm going to collide with the box and an action is going to happen. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to set my box to 200, 200, 200, just over here, just so that it's nice and big. There we are. And then, just in case I forget where my box is, because it's going to be invisible when I press run, I'm just going to put this little sphere just in the middle of it, just drag it in. Now, if I click play and just walk forward, Nothing is happening. That's because we have some objects that we can create an action with, but we don't have them doing anything. It's not saying to anything, you are here, do this. Now, this is where the power of the blueprint comes in. And like I say, this is going to be very, very simple at first. So if I go over here to my blueprints and just click the little down arrow, you'll see we've got some basic settings here. And one of them is this one called Open Level Blueprint. Now, blueprints work one of two ways. We can either have an individual single blueprint that we can reuse, such as a door blueprint that we drag into our scene and we can walk up to it, interact, open the door, whatever. And that we can put it over as many levels as we want. But we also have this level blueprint, and this level blueprint will only work with the level that we are inside. So I could make one for level 1, but then if I went to level 2, I would have to make the blueprint again for level 2 in my level blueprint. But I'm going to use this at the minute because it's a really good way of building a big overhead kind of system. Click there. Right, well, this is scary first time you see it. A lot of people look at this and they go, oh, what's this? I don't understand what this is. This is our palette. This is our graph. This is where we put things. So we want things to happen. We want events to happen. This is where we put them. And at the minute, it just looks very unfriendly and very scary. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select this box that we just put in, this collision box. So I'll just select it here. And then over here, what I want is I want Unreal Engine to say, when I walk into this space, something is going to happen. So I'm going to right click. And if I right click, we get these. These are contextual events. So it knows we have the trigger box selected. So now I can call functions on my trigger box or add events for it. Let's open up the events and see what we have. Well, we can see straight away at the top, collision. So if I crash into or walk through something. So I'll open that up and add on actor begin overlap. So what's going to happen is when I start to overlap with this box, it's going to say you're interacting with this box, and then it can do something. So let's turn that on. There we are. So I just clicked on it. And what we get here is this very simple node. And what it's saying is, this is the name of the item. This is the action. So it's nice and readable. On actor begin overlap. And we have this, the execute pin. So what's happening is we have a little program now, and it's saying something can happen when we begin the overlap. Now, what can happen? Let's do something very, very easy. What we're going to do is we're going to do a print. So I'm going to drag this out. And if I do that, then it means that if I have this ticked, my context sensitive box, I can only perform actions that are relevant, that are going to work with the trigger box. Okay, so I'm going to type in print. And there you get it there, print string. Now, at the minute, it just says hello. That's fine to me. So I'll hit compile and save. Now, that may seem really obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people go, oh, it's not working. And that's because until you hit these two, it's not actually compiled. It's not part of the program. Okay, so I'm going to close down this tab. Another thing I could do is I could drag it up here if I want, but I just tend to close mine down. Right, now, if I click play, let's walk forward. And what I want you to do is look in the top left corner of my screen, just where it says lighting needs to be rebuilt. And as I walk forward, the word hello appears. Hello. Hello. Okay, so it's working. Now, another thing we can do is we can then build on top of this. So how can we build on top of this? Well, let's go back to our blueprint system. Open level blueprint. There we are. And we could have another one. So on actor end overlap. So making sure this is selected. Right click. And this time, rather than clicking on add event and finding it that way, what we can do is we can just type overlap. And it will find everything that we can do regarding that. Okay, so we can see everything here, and I'm going to click Add on Actor End Overlap. And what I can do with this is just drag it out, type print, and in here, I can just type goodbye. Really simple stuff. But until you know how to do it, it could be written in moon language. So let's press play. And I'll go in, hello, I'll leave, goodbye. And it works. So if you've followed along that far, congratulations, you are now a programmer. Add it to your CV. Brilliant. But this is only basic stuff, okay? So what can the Blueprint system do? Well, it can do almost anything that C++ can. We can control anything in our scene using blueprints, just like we could if we were working behind the scenes using C++. And the difference is that we have this very, very visual system where we can see what's happening all of the time. So let me kind of expand on what we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete our little test blueprint that we just made here. Okay, so if I delete this, what's going to happen? Well, first of all, the blueprint system knows that that is being referred to. It says the trigger box is being used in our blueprint. Do you really want to get rid of it? So at least we'll get a warning. Now I do, so I'm going to click yes. However, I also need to go to my level blueprint here and just delete these because we're not using them now. And it'll just make our blueprint messy and make errors. So there we go, it's gone, like it was never here. And instead, what I'm going to do, so I'll just clean up some of this stuff all over the place, is I'm going to show you the difference now with a reusable blueprint. And this is where people get confused because a lot of people come in, I know I did 7 years ago when I first started using Unreal Engine 4, and they say, you know, the blueprint system, the level blueprint system is really powerful, but it's not very easy to use if I have another level. It's not very easy if I want to reuse things over and over again. And I explain to people that there's different kinds of blueprints, the placeable blueprints, the blueprint actor system, and the level blueprint. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to make an actor blueprint and show the difference. So over here, I'm going to go to my content folder by just clicking on it. And I'm going to make a new folder in here, so new folder, and call it my blueprints. There we go. And I'm inside that now. Now inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to click create basic asset blueprint class. And when I do that, what it's going to do is it's going to give me this list of kinds of blueprints that I can create. Now, I've only got an hour, so I can't go into too much detail about all of these, but there is really good documentation on the internet for all of it. You can just click the little question mark. But the important ones today are the actor, because the actor is any kind of object that I can place in the world that we can then interact with. And it is very, very, very reusable. So if I click on this, and for my new blueprint, let's call it something simple like BP, just so that I know it's a blueprint, makes it easier to search. Or, and then I'm going to hit Control and S. Now, what I can do now is I can just drag my blueprint into my scene. And when I drag it into my scene, the only thing there is this little round thing, just to show that there is a blueprint in my level. When I click play, there'll be nothing else there. And that's because my blueprint is empty. It has no geometry, it has no sounds, it has nothing. So what I'm going to do now is build on that. So I'm going to double click on BP door. And before, where we were working in the level blueprint, we went straight here to this third tab called event graph. Okay. And as you can see, we still have the event graph. And what it's done is it's put in 3 basic events that we can work with to start off with if we want. So we have on the event begin play. So when we start playing the game, something can happen from this blueprint. When we overlap our blueprint, something can happen. Or event tick. So every part of a second, every game tick, something can happen. Now, out of these, do try and avoid using this one too much, because it's very expensive on processing time, because it's happening all the time, over and over and over again. But this is where our events and where all the things that we build as a blueprint will go. Now, next to it, we have this. This is our construction script. And this is things that happen when we put our blueprint into our level. So when we put our blueprint into a level, everything here will run. Everything will also happen if I change anything on my blueprint, or if I move it, or anything like that. That will happen in my construction script. And then finally here, the viewport. Now, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I was a 3D artist for 22 years. And this is one of the reasons why I like Unreal Engine, because I can put things together inside of this really, really easily. And this is where we put our assets. This is where we put our 3D assets, our sound assets, anything we want that's going to make our object or objects that we interact with more interesting. So, well, functional. I'm just resizing my window because obviously I don't want to share a 4K screen. It would be very hard to read. And down here at the bottom, what I've done is I've made sure that I have my starter content. It's because Unreal Engine always says, do you want some starter content? And it's a bit rubbish, but you know, it's fine. So if I go to my starter content and come to props, we can see that I've already got some stuff I can use. So I've got a door frame and I've got a door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my door frame just up here and drop it. And when I do that, you can see I'm just using my right mouse button and WASD to move around again, that I now have a door in my scene. Now, I want to put the actual door inside my door frame. Pardon me. So I'm going to drag this and pop it just here. And just like if I was using Blender, 3ds Max, whatever, I have my gizmo, so I can move things and get them in just the right position if I want. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit, just move forward. And up here on my snaps, because these are all snap tools, I'll change this to 5 and just move my door over a tiny bit. There we are. Okay, so we now have a door. And if I click compile and save and just come in here, we can see that it's updated the blueprint that I put into our scene. So we now have this doorway just sitting here like this. If I go into my blueprints, I can drag out as many copies of this as I want. So it's really handy for being able to produce things really, really quickly. So I'll delete some of these again. Now, what we want to do is we want our BP door to open when we come near to it. The whole idea is we're going to walk up to our door and the door is going to open, and then we can get on with whatever it is we want to do. So if I just double click on my door, and remember I was talking about things like this, the event graph, okay? So what I'd like to do is a very simple one. We've talked about event actor begin overlap, and I want to use that to basically say, I am near the door, please open. But we have a problem. If I move over here and then just click on my blueprint, we can see that there isn't actually a collision for this, okay? We'd have to literally stand right up against the door with our nose to it before it would open. So what we need to do is we need to add a collision volume to our door so that it will recognize that. So what I'm going to do, go to Viewport, and if I just click on this default scene root, add component, and type in box, I can add my box collision straight in. And there it is there. Now, I want to size this so that it's a good size for us, so that when we walk up to the door, it will know that we're in front. So I'll bring this up to about here. And then I can just use my scale tool if I prefer, and just scale it to the right size. And again, this is something I really like, very visual way for me to work. There we go. So we can see that if I'm standing in front of the door now, the door will know that I'm there. Okay, so I'm going to hit compile. and save. And now I can come up to my event graph and I'm going to delete event begin play. So I'll just select that and delete, because I can have it back anytime. If I just right click and type begin play and then click again, I can have it back anytime I want. So don't worry. And I'll get rid of event tick. And then over here, event begin overlap, I'll make sure it works by doing a quick print. So compile and save. Okay, let's test it. Yes, it's letting us collide. So that's great. Well, that's not what doors do. When I walk up to a door, it doesn't normally just say, hello, Chris. If it did, then there's something in my orange juice. So what we want is this door to open. Now, this is something that I really, really like. Again, remember I said it's all very, very visual. So I know that I want the door here. If I go to my viewport, the door to open. And I know that the pivot point on my door is correct, because if I press E for rotate, you can see the pivot on this door is going to be fine. So let's use this. If I go to my event graph, and what I'm going to do is take my SM door and just drag it onto here and leave it. And now what we have is we have this. This is a reference to my door model, my SM door. And if I drag out from this, I can do all sorts of things like rotating it, or I can do things like scaling it or moving it, or all sorts of other things like that. So let me have a look. What I want to do is on my event actor begin overlap, I want to set rotation. So if I just type set rot, okay, because it will work it out what I'm wanting to do from that, we see that I've got various transformations here. Set world rotation, set relative rotation, so the relative rotation to what it is right now, or set location and rotation. So I'm going to set relative rotation. There we go. And it gives us this. And this is our node that's going to rotate it, as you can see. So if I just click here and drag it over to here, now when I do an actor event begin overlap, it's going to start this set relative rotation. And where do I want it to rotate? I want it to rotate on this, the Z axis, 110 degrees. 90 is never enough. 110, door handle doesn't hit you in the tummy. You can see there's a little arrow here. So I have some additional options such as sweep or teleport. They're not so important. I just want to set the rotation of the door, and I'm doing it as a relative rotation. So compile, save. Okay, so let's see what happens. If I just click play and walk over, oh, the door's open. Brilliant. Now, the reason I can't walk through the door is because the collision is set wrongly. These are very old meshes that came with the original 4.02 Unreal Engine. They're not very good, but don't worry, we're just testing it, okay? You can use any mesh you like with this. All right, so we know that works and that the door's open, but now maybe we want more control over this, okay? Because there's a few things to bear in mind. One, I don't know about lovely Turkey, but in England, doors don't just go whoosh. Two, maybe we don't want the door to open quite so wide all the time. Three, maybe the door's open already. It's all about reusability, really important. So let's think, is the door going to be open? Maybe. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a little bit of complexity to our blueprint by using a variable. Now, I realize straight away, if you were an artist like me, variables sound terrifying, but it's just a way for this to store some information and look at it. It's a much easier way for it to understand information and data. So if I click plus variable, and it'll give me a little name that I can use down here. And I'm going to just call this, is the door already open? Question mark. Because we can use very friendly names. So is the door already open? I've just hit return. And if we look over here, this is a Boolean. Now I wanted it to be a Boolean. A Boolean is yes, no, on, off. Okay, there's only two answers with a Boolean. But default value, it says please compile. So if I hit compile and then save, you see now we have, is the door already open? And I can tick that or untick it. Now, compile and save. If I come over here and click on my door, you'll see, well, there's no difference. Over here, and again, I do encourage you to have a play around with Unreal Engine because there's a lot of stuff to learn. But over here in the detail panel, there's nothing special here that lets us click open, shut door. That's because if you look here, the little I is closed. It's not a public variable. So I'm going to click there on I. And then over here, I'm going to give it a category name. And that means it's going to be easier for us to find it. Just door. That's what I'm calling the category, and hit return. So now it's inside of this category and it's a public variable. Compile, save. Now look over here, adjust door. Is the door already open? False. And if I tick it, nothing's happening. Why? There's a good reason, because it's just a variable. We're not reading it. We're not telling this to do anything with the variable. Let's fix that. Open up our door again and remember the construction script, which we haven't used yet. So if I click here, construction script may as well say when you do anything except run the game. And what I want it to do is I want it to read the value of, is this door already open? So I'm going to get, is the door already open? So I just dragged it in and clicked get. Another thing I could do is I could select it, right click, and I could put get there and do it that way as well. So there's lots of different ways, but that's how I'm doing it. And I'm going to put it here just to keep it tidy. And then what I want to do is what's called an if statement. Now in Unreal Engine, we don't call it if, it's called a branch because there's two decisions we can make, true or false. So I'm going to drag this and type branch. There we go. And what we're doing is we're saying, is this true or is this false? Now, if it's true, is the door already open? Then what we want to do is we would like to set the relative rotation automatically to this. So I'm just going to grab it using this click and drag, press Control and C, and then Control and V and put it over here and just move them to about there. There we are. So if it's true, the door's already open, I'm going to link that to that, and it will automatically set the rotation to 110. And if not, well, I'll just press Control W again. Sorry, Control V, just to paste it. And I'll get rid of this because we already have a reference in our scene. And now set that one to 0. And I just want to connect the target to my SM door. Right, so this looks a little bit more complicated and scary, but I promise you it isn't. So let's read what we've done. When we put it in our scene, construction script, when it builds it, is the door already open? If it is, then it's going to set the rotation of the door to 110 degrees. If it isn't, it'll set it to 0. That's it. Let's move this over here. And now with our door in our scene just here, is the door already open? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. May not seem like a big thing, but I teach a lot of architects, I teach a lot of engineers. It's the same with game development. Let's imagine that you have hundreds of these doors. This one is open. This one is open. This one is not open. This one is open. These are all using the same blueprint. The only difference is we're just giving them a slightly different variable. So we're saving ourselves time. We don't have to do things over and over and over and over again. Now, I'll get rid of these because I want to expand on it, because a door is the best way to learn. There's so many things you can do with a door. Seems silly, but there really is. Okay, so is the door already open? We've done that. There's something important though, because if we've already decided the door is open, then we need to go over here to our event graph, and there's no point setting the relative rotation. So what we need to do is we need to get this, get is the door already open, and do a branch. And if the door is already open when we walk up to it, then there's no point in it doing this. It can only do this if it's false. So if the door's shut, it knows the door is shut and will open it. I know it seems, you know, a long way of doing things, but this way we get something that's very, 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 very reusable. Compile, save. Okay, so what do we want to do with this next? Well, we've used a variable already to say, is the door already open? Maybe we need a variable to decide how open is the door. Because remember, we're telling it 110 degrees at the moment, okay, just here and in our event graph. So what we perhaps want is we would like a variable that is a value that we can put into that for our rotation. So let's go over here to our variables just here. And I'm going to just click plus to add a new variable. And this new variable's name is going to be called door opening angle. Now, I want this to be public, so I'm going to click the little I just to open it. And over here in the category, I really want this to be in the adjust door category, okay? But this is a Boolean, and a Boolean isn't suitable for what we want because that's just yes, no. That would be good if perhaps we only had two settings, you know, 60 degrees, 110 degrees. But maybe if we want exact control, we should use a float. So if I select a float, we now have a floating point number. So that can be something, point something, something, something. You know, we can get some real accuracy with this. And I'm going to hit compile and save. And for my default value, 110 worked. So let's put that in there. Now here you can see we've got some ranges, okay? So this is our open value. So let's say that we're going to be giving this blueprint to someone else in our team. Even if we're indies, sometimes we work with other people. So we don't want the door to be any less than, let's say, 70 degrees, because 70 degrees is about the minimum we can squeeze through. And we certainly don't want it to open any more than about 130, because after that, it's going to start clipping into the door frame. So now what's going to happen is if I hit compile and save and just select my door, we can see that we have this door opening angle that will only go between 70 and 130. So it's going to constrain us and stop us putting in values that won't work. I'll set that back to 110 because it's not doing anything yet. Now, how do we make it do something? Okay, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take our door opening angle just here. So I'm going to get it. I'm going to put it here so it's nice and tidy. And I need to feed this into my Z. Now, at the minute, if I was just to drag this and drop it here, it's not going to work because it's not compatible. Okay, because this is a rotator and my rotator is looking for 3 axes, the X, the Y, the Z, and a single value isn't going to be enough to fill that. But if I come over here and just right click on it, I can split the structural pin. And if I split the structural pin, it then splits it into 3 floats, X, Y, and Z. And I can just take this, pop it here, compile, save. And now what's happening is it's going to pick up the door opening angle and feed that into the new Z rotation angle. I'm going to do the same thing on my construction script. So if I come over here and I want to get my door opening angle, there we are. And again, where this new rotation is, I'll just move this up a little bit so it doesn't overlap. It doesn't matter if they overlap. It's just you tend to get really obsessed with it being tidy after a while. And I'll connect door opening angle here. Compile, save. Great, that is done. So if I come out here now, and here's my door opening angle. And as you see, I can adjust it and I get an immediate result. So is the door already open? Yes, 77 degrees. And remember, it's all about reusability. So I bring a few of these out. Okay, like so. That one's closed. That one allows you to open it all the way to there. And that one all the way to there. So we have three very different looks, three very different operable doors. Okay, let's build on that. You're like, no, stop. No, we're going to keep going. Right. So at the minute, we're saying, is the door open? Is the door? How open is the door? All this kind of thing. I'm not going to spend time on what's called a timeline curve. A timeline curve would ease the door in and make it animate open and animate closed. If I get 5 minutes at the end, I promise I'll show you. But let's focus on something else as well, which is giving some data and showing some data. So if I go to my viewport again, and what I'd like to do is come down to my content, go to my starter content, architecture, and just over here, wall door 400 by 300. So I'm going to grab this and just put it into my scene like that. And the reason I'm doing that is because now I have a wall around my door. Now remember, these are modular, basic Unreal Engine assets. So I know they're going to be round about the right size, what I need. If you're not using carefully measured modular assets, just be careful. Anyway, just make sure this is lined up. That looks fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another box to this just so that we can have some information. So if I go to add component and cube, there we are. And I'm just going to move this over here. Next, I'm going to just scale it in just a tiny bit because I just want to make a quick sign. I'm going to turn off snapping on my scale to make it a little bit easier. Scale always snaps really strangely. There we go. So this is just so that I've got a little kind of notice board next to my door. And I'll hit compile and save. And I'm going to get rid of some of my excess ones. So go away, go away. That way I've got one left. And this is on the wrong side, so I'll just bring it through. There we are. I don't have to be too tidy. I don't think this is going to be Quake 7. There we are. Okay, so now we have this kind of notice board outside of our door. Okay, now why this kind of notice board? Well, first of all, let's change its name. So here where it says cube, I'm going to hit F2 and type notice board. And I don't want it to be a child of the wall door. So I'm just going to drag it and drop. And that way it's on its own. If it's a child, that means I can hide them in groups or whatever, but I don't want that. Now, what I'd like is this to be visible and to give us some information. So I'm going to add a very simple text component. Now, as you get better in using blueprints, you'll use things like widgets to make it look much more attractive, but a text component will do the job for the minute. So let's go and find a text, and I can just type in TEXT. And I'm going to bring it over here and rotate it so it's in the right place. So just get it up here, and I'm just using my move tools. There we go. And horizontal alignment, I'm going to make center. And my color should be something that I can read, because as you can see in my background, if you've seen it, I'm very colorblind. So I don't see color very well at all. There we go. Bring that out. There, text. Right. So this text should have a purpose. And the purpose of this is only going to be to tell us, is this door locked or is this door unlocked? That's it. So I'm going to drag text render, and I'm going to make sure text render is part of notice board. So if you look, if they're just next to each other like that, take text render and drag it up like so. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new variable. So plus variable, and I'm going to call this open text. And I'm going to change the variable type here to a text. I'm going to click little I, compile, save. And the open text will just say open. Now I'm going to duplicate this variable. So what I'll do is I'll select it, and to copy it, I can either Control C, Control V, or Control W. And then I don't need to do Control C, and I'll call this one closed text. And I will change, if I hit compile and save, the message on this to closed. Very simple message. Is the door open or closed? Just in case you don't know. Right, so now I'm going to take these and make them a part of this, the adjust door. Now I can just drag them into the group to make it easier for me. Compile, save. And I want this text to change if the door is open or if the door is closed. So let's go to my construction script. And on my construction script here, we've got, is the door already open? If the door is already open, then I'm going to get my open text, get, and I'm going to set the text of my text render just here. So I'll drag it in and type set text. And there we get it. We can now change the variable of the text. Let's drag these together. And the new value of set text is going to be the value of the open text. There we go. It seems hard. Sometimes your brain goes, but it's not. Okay, text render, all we're doing is telling this that we want its new text to say whatever's in here if it's open. And then I'm going to copy it, bring this down here, and I'm going to attach the closed text. So I can delete this one and just drag in this one. Okay, so I can set the value there, compile and save. Right, so now you can see that if our door is set to open, the sign will say open or closed. So now we have a door where we can set the angle, we can open it or close it. Very visual, very easy to understand. Let's do a last bit on this then. So event graph, and over here, we're deciding whether it's true or false if our door is open. So we can copy these. So I'm going to do Control C and put these in our event graph. There we are. And now if our door is already open, let's make sure the text is reading that the door is already open. And if the door is closed, there. So if we change it, now it will change the value from open to closed in the text. A very simple way of sending information to the player, or like I say, if you're an archviz or an engineer person, a very simple way of sending information to whichever client you're sending it to. But it's data, it's important. Now, we do have a couple of minutes left. I know it's quite a short thing, but too much blueprint tires you for the whole day. You know, when you're learning, it can be quite overwhelming. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is we have a really cool blueprint function called a timeline. So if I use a timeline, what I would do is I would have it between here and my set rotation. And what it will do is it will set my value of my rotation over time. Now, I'll quickly show you, but I can't promise you'll be able to understand, you'll be able to get it all in the time I've got. But let's drag out the false pin so that we can set the door opening. And I'm going to type timeline, add timeline. Now we get a name here, and I'll call it door opens. So what's going to happen is it's going to play, and while it updates, it can update this Z rotation. So I'll double click on it, and I'm going to create a float track. And this will be output as a floating point number. And I'll call it output. There we go. Now, it's 5 seconds long at the minute, so I'll make it 3 seconds. And I'm just zooming out so I can see it a bit better. So near the beginning of this, I'm going to hold Shift and click. Near the end, I'll hold Shift and click. And that makes us these two keys. The first key, I'll change the time to 0, and the value can stay at 0. And the second one, I'll give it a time of 3 for 3 seconds and a value of 1. Then I'm going to select both these keys and press 1, and that will just smooth my curve for me. and then hit compile and save. Right, back to my event graph. So we can now see I've got an output value here. I'm going to move everything here along a little bit just to make me a little bit of space. And what I can do with this output value is I could feed it straight into my Z, but all that's going to happen is my rotation will change 1 degree over 3 seconds, which isn't correct. What I instead want to do is I'm going to take my door opening angle just here. I'm going to hit multiply, so I'm hitting the star, and I'm going to times a float by a float. Now, what float am I going to multiply this number by? This one. So now my door opening angle, which could be 90, will multiply by the output of this over time into here. Compile and save. And let's see what difference that does. So I'll hit play, walk over. Hopefully Unreal Engine won't crash on me. There, you can see the door opening. I'll just do that again because it's frozen out. There. So the door opens slowly and gradually over time. And of course, remember, we can adjust how open the door is. So now if I hit play, after changing it to 70, the door should only open 70 degrees. And remember what I said about blueprints being lovely and reusable. So if I change this to 100 on my snaps, I can create a corridor really, really quickly and really, really easily with all of these interactive doors that I can label and that I can have set completely differently to each other. And suddenly my job becomes so much easier, because if I hit play, every single one of these doors is operating individually. They're all opening over time. They can all be closed or open. And that is a very, very, very fast introduction to how the blueprint system works. Now, the last thing before I finish is we went into my blueprints and made this BP door, this reusable BP door. Imagine you have someone else working with you on your network or maybe over the internet, which is more likely during these horrible times. If I right click, asset actions, migrate, save everything, there we go. What it will do is find everything that belongs to this blueprint. So you can see the textures for the doors and the door frames and the walls and the blueprint itself. And if I click OK, it will let me send this anywhere I want. So if I send it to, for example, my desktop, and I'll put it in new folder demo content, there we go. And I'll just go in there and just select. It will say this doesn't appear to be a game content folder. It's fine. And the reason I've done that is because now I can zip this up. If I go to my demo content, there we go. I can zip this up and these can be put in any content folder. So if I come over here, for example, to my Unreal projects for my own stuff and go into my Wiki 7 content, there we go. If I just drop it in here, that blueprint will work. It will not have any errors. It will automatically pick up all the variables and every single asset that belongs to it will be in this project file. Anyway, it's now 10 minutes to 12. I realize there's been an awful lot to take in there, and I'm very sorry that we had to rush through it so much, because blueprints are amazing fun. If you're creative and you love messing around with 3D and you like seeing things happen in real time, blueprints are so much fun. Obviously, I'm going to be here for a little bit longer, so if you have any questions, by all means, please let me know. I know this is supposed to be the point where I promote what I'm doing, but I like teaching. It's what I do. So, you know, that's what I'm going to do. So, how much time, do I have much time left? If I do, I can put some more things in. Otherwise, I'm quite happy to answer questions.
In 5 minutes, we have to close. You have 5 more minutes if you like, or we can.
I like having more time. That's great. Okay, then. Well, that's really good. In that case, I'll show you one last thing. Okay, I know we don't have a lot of time, and that's sad, but I've got you up to speed. We'll be fine.
If you like, we have a question in the Q&A. If you like, you can check that and answer.
Oh, there we go. Yes, I do actually have some YouTube tutorials very, very similar to this. Let me just find it because I stream all the time because of what I do with my game development. I'll quickly close this down because I want to show you some of the complexities you can do with Unreal Engine while we're doing it in Blueprints. But if I go to YouTube, I spent 20 years making commercial tutorials and now I just do them all for free because you know what the internet's like. So let me have a look. My channel. Here we are, CGPirates Learning Network. Thought as much. I've actually got a complete set of tutorials on starting using blueprints in here. So let me just pop this into here. There we go. I think that is the right link. If it isn't, just let me know and I'll send a correct one. Regarding how complicated we can make things, hopefully this will load in the next couple of moments. Now, this is a video game that I'm working on at the moment called The Wiki. And as you can probably tell, I'm a very visual artist. I like visual, I like big, I like exciting looking things. And when I started in 3D, the first thing I wanted to do was make things as big and exciting as I could. And people always said, oh, you've got to work by limits, you know, too many polygons is bad, all this kind of thing. I don't like working within limits. So as a single developer, I wanted to see how much I could produce just using blueprints, how much stuff I could make using assets that I've made or even assets that I've bought from the marketplace to kind of boost things up. Hopefully this will load because it's this project's 68 gigabytes, a very, very big project, things everywhere. But what I've done is I've created an open world real-time island, 4 kilometers square. And this real-time island, it has different areas that load in, try and optimize, and we can use blueprints for that. So remember the collision box that we had? I walk into the collision box and it knows I'm coming up to a certain part of the island. It will unload other parts of the island so that the game will optimize for lower end computers. Now, even though I built this on a NVIDIA 3070 on a pretty powerful computer, it works on a 900 series NVIDIAs, you know, some of the slower ones from about 5-6 years ago. And that's important because as developers, we always need to remember that we need to build down, certainly as indies, because it's important that as many people as possible who want to play our game are able to. And so using blueprints, we can optimize things an awful lot. We can unload things when they're not needed. We can load things up when they are needed. Here we are. This is probably going to be the wrong level, but we will live. Here we go. I'll just press G and get this in the right area. Yeah, this is the wrong level. I'm not going to load up the actual level because it'll take another 5 minutes and we don't really have too much time. But this is the one that I put my tests in usually. And as you can see here, I have a water system that's working entirely using blueprints. So what it's doing is it's simulating what are called Gersner waves, just using blueprints. Then up here, we have a sky system. Again, this is using blueprints to work out how high the sun is in the sky and then adjusting our clouds automatically. So if the sun's up, it's lovely blue skies. If the sun goes down, we start getting sunset, 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 sunset. Auroras come out. All blueprints. All it's doing is it's calculating the angle of the sun and then changing things. Over here, remember what I said about having parts hidden. So for example, over here, I'll turn the lighting off. I have a large area called a block, which is Scottish, that I can hide and unhide depending on if the player's near it. I have the key down here, which is where the boats obviously dock, which I can hide and unhide. And it's the same with all of this. So I can increase my complexity and have so much in my scene simply because I'm turning things off and turning them on all of the time. As an example of a blueprint, this is a blueprint, and I can choose exactly how my house looks just by selecting some different options. Which back wall does it have? Does it have a roof? Does it have a room divider? Does it have a front? All these things allow me to very, very quickly build up a video game that otherwise I might need 10, 15, 20 people for. So I can then focus on what it is that I want to make and get it looking exactly the way. And if I was doing this with C++, I'd still be stuck at hello world, because I'm not very good at C++. I hope this has been of help. I am always available on the internet. I will stay in the channel as well, because I'm always happy to meet new people from all over the world. I usually teach all over Europe, so that's not a problem. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you see any of my old tutorials that I used to charge money for that you want, let me know and you can just have them. And if you need any answers about any blueprints, I'm always around. I literally live on this computer, so I am always happy to help. So do you have any questions before we finish up? Because I know there's some clever people coming.
There is one more question, but our time is over. We have to prepare for the next session. So maybe you can answer those kinds of questions in our Discord channel as well.
Of course I will. Of course I will.
Thank you so much for coming, and
thank you for inviting me. It's been a
great day. See you in our previous or next sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.